My name's Luke Greenwood. I'm the International Director for a mission called Steiger, and I've had the privilege of being part of the European Leadership Forum for a number of years, just being blessed by everything that we get to learn and connect with here. And today I'm really blessed and really excited to be talking to Efrem Buckle from London. Efrem is the Deputy Director, Deputy CEO and Director of Training and Mentoring at London City Mission. But he's also grown up in South London, and I think would describe himself as being part of the hip hop generation, and was part of a music duo called Ministry of Defense over a number of years. And God's just used you, Efrem, over the years to really connect with hip hop culture, to reach people in London and all around. But you've been involved with so many other things along the way. So I'm excited to talk today and to hear more. But I'd love to start with just hearing a little bit more of your story and your connection to hip hop culture and why God put that on your heart.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having me, and for such a wonderful introduction. So I was born in the early 70s, and it's crazy because I think it was 2023, they marked the 50th anniversary of hip hop. And so technically I predate that by maybe about 4 years.
Yeah.
So I grew up as hip hop was being birthed and have seen it through its whole life cycle, through its formative years to what it's become now. And for me, growing up in South London as somebody who is of Jamaican heritage and first generation born in the UK, never related to my Jamaican heritage. I didn't really know it, and yet struggled to fit in as a young black boy in Britain in that time. There was, racism and so on. And so to have a sense of identity was a struggle. And so hip hop became my tribe because it felt like the voice of hip hop, how it gave voice to those who were struggling in poor and marginalized communities, was something that I related to. I grew up on a housing estate in South London, and I knew the struggle. And it felt like you had these people from another part of the world that I had only seen in Hollywood, dramas, speaking of an experience that I really connected with, that resonated with me in ways that had me fully identify with hip hop. So, I was right from the beginning, really exposed to, and obviously it's not like today where you just open your computer and jump on the internet and see stuff. There was no internet. Yeah. There was, even just being able to kind of get music was a mission. And so you were listening to underground stations, pirate radio, right, and people would come back from trips with white label, and they'll, I've got this tune stuff from New York or whatever. And so even that side of it was really quite exciting. It was like this age of discovery. It's like, this music coming out of New York, and it's speaking of stuff that we can relate to. Wow. And just seeing it emerge and develop really was how I got connected and identified with hip hop as my tribe, really.
Yeah, that's amazing. Like, for me, it's really encouraging to see some of your trajectory and story and to hear you talking about it, because I feel so many similarities with the kind of work we do with our mission, reaching young people, young adults around the world. We talk a lot about the importance of understanding the secular scene around us and reaching the scene. And that can be a cultural scene or a music or an art scene. And I see how strongly God has used you over the years to connect with that scene and to understand that, maybe from a missional perspective. How did that become for you?
It's crazy because I talk about, growing up, being exposed to hip hop culture and that being my tribe. All the while I was growing up in church.
Right.
So I was brought up by my grandmother, and she took me to church at the point I was able to walk. It's like, she was already retired. So it was kind of like, you're going to come to church, but you're not going to make work for me. So as soon as you're walking, you're going. And so I was in church the whole time. And
so you were connecting with the hip hop culture around you, but you were going to church at the same time.
So I'd go to church on a Sunday and on a Wednesday and on a Thursday for choir practice. And in between, I'm listening to the pirate radio stations and I'm,
Did your grandmother know about that?
Tapes. Nah, bro. Right. Real talk, But to be fair, to an extent, she wouldn't have even been aware if she had. because in those days, hip hop isn't what it is now with the misogyny and all of the kind of corruptive messaging. It was good time music. It was, it was about skills and feeling good.
Wow.
And rocking the party. You know what I mean? And so that kind of, I'd get tapes or would make up tapes as we're listening to radio and then play them back. And all the while, I'm trying to reconcile this with my experience in church. And I realized when I became a Christian, because I kind of got into hip hop before I committed and submitted to Christ. And at the point when I submitted to Christ, it felt like I had to make a choice and to put that all away. And be focused on the Lord, which I did. And then I began to focus on gospel music and choir singing and quartets and that kind of music. And the turning point for me, from a missional point of view, was when I saw how inaccessible the church was to people from the scene, from the culture, from the community. Because hip hop and its messaging, especially as you kind of get into the 80s, became much more of a, not just social commentary, but social activism. You had like Public Enemy, KRS-One, and such like. They were bringing messages of just social activism. They were calling things out and they were calling for change. And so in that context, there wasn't a very high regard for the black church in the black community. And so people were drifting further from church. And right on the cusp of that turning point, I remember experiences where peers from my housing estate or from my school or from my college would come to church and be ostracized because of the way they looked, because they didn't fit in with how someone was expected to look if they're coming to the house of God.
Right, they weren't wearing their suits.
And so I remember somebody turned up in shorts and trainers and they'd obviously had a real difficult situation and was coming for refuge. And I remember being at the door, just passing the door at that time, and he came to the door and it was like, somebody greeted him and was like, you're coming to church? And looked him up and down, looking like that. And at that point, my heart was broken because I'm like, this is where they should be. This is where my man should be. And so on that level, it was like, okay, Lord, how do we reach people? Because whereas there used to be a culture of people at least coming to church and having a form of churchianity. They were God conscious and they would kind of go through the motions. Then they stopped and they would like, okay, I'm not going to go anymore, but I'm going to send my kids. And then they stopped sending their kids. And so the community was becoming more and more alienated from church. And we were more and more compelled to have to try and reach out. And so it was in that context that I linked up with my Cody Fendon, partner in rhyme, Rob, and we'd been praying, just how do we reach our community? And it was really just a providential turn of events. I wasn't into actually creating rhymes and so on. I appreciated the art, but I never ever wrote a rhyme before I became a Christian. I never aspired to be a rapper. And so, and neither did Rob. And one day there was an outreach that we were invited to participate in at a pub in Peckham, and it was a notorious pub in South London. Gangsters often on the news and crime, criminals known to frequent it and so on. And by God's providence, the owner had said, oh yeah, you guys can come in and do something inspirational, happy clappy stuff. None of that Bible bash.
So he knew you were a Christian. So
well, it was a friend that he extended that invitation to, and she was just like, we were all in a kind of social circle, regularly meeting up for Bible study and whatnot. And she came to the Bible study and she was like, you'll never believe it. I got an invite to the Red Bull in Peckham, and we can go in there and we can do something, but we can't just Bible bash. And so we started to work out, it was like, someone said they'll share their testimony. Someone said that they'll do some poetry, and someone said that they'll maybe sing a song, and someone had a little kind of drama sketch and I went in there, I said, cool, maybe I'll sing something. I grew up singing in church, and I was thinking, and then Rob said, you know what, I've got something I'll do. So long story short, we're in there, regulars are in there, And, we're doing our thing and people are kind of chit-chatting and they're not really paying attention. And then Rob gets up and he goes I put this tape in the deck. And he puts this tape in and he starts to play this beat and he starts to rap. And the whole place went quiet and everyone's looking. And the regulars are looking and we're looking. Because we never expected this. We never saw him do this. And we've not heard nothing like this too. There were just little glimpses. There was a couple of guys in the UK that were beginning to rap for the Lord and put, Christianity into lyrics. But Rob was the first person I saw up close and personal do it. And so the whole place is astounded. Everything's gone quiet. And then all of a sudden, bang, bang, bang on the table. The regulars are like, yeah, come again with that.
Wow.
And it's not like a DJ spinning back decks. We're on a tape deck. And so we had to take about 3 minutes to get it back to find the right place.
To rewind it.
To rewind it.
Crazy.
But it exploded the possibility of how this can really engage people.
So was that the beginning of the Ministry of Defence, the music duo? So it was you and you said Rob, right?
That's right, yeah.
So you guys started. And then where did that take you after, like with the music duo? And I've heard of other things you guys did in terms of impacting the city of London, God's Corner, these different ministries that you guys started. How did that music moment lead to more missional work to reach that scene?
So we, at that point, resolved, this is the Lord at work. This is a tool that he's given us because we didn't have it before, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we then began to get invited out because I was like, Rob, if you rap and I sing, then we can kind of do a little combo, a 1-2 flex, and that will, add to the ability to engage. Yeah. And so we got invited to prisons. Our first prison visit was to Feltham Young Offenders in West London. And it was very intense. And there was people at the beginning, because, in prison often inmates would go to chapel for just a social occasion, just a chance to get out of their cell and see others. And sometimes it was a chance to kind of actually, let people know that they're coming for them. Yeah. And so this is my first time in a prison context, and I'm a church boy, I'm sitting there and I'm quaking in my seat, and then I'm seeing inmates looking over to the other side of the chapel going like this to other inmates, like, I'm gonna go. Yeah. And I'm thinking it's gonna jump off in here, it's about to get mad. And I'm just praying, and I'm thinking, what if they don't like the music? Start throwing chairs at us or something. It's like, you know what I mean? So I'm in there, Rob's got his head down, I don't even know what he's thinking. And I've virtually got tears in my eyes thinking, Lord, what am I doing here? And we get up and we only had 2 songs and they gave us half an hour. And so we were like, well, we got to kind of introduce the song. And at the end of the day, the only reason we're here is to share the gospel. So let's make sure we do that. So we shared the gospel and we shared how the song related to the gospel. I think the first song we done was something like the kingdom of God is at hand, something like that. And so we kind of talked, why is that the chorus of the song? And we explained that, and then we done the song. And then again, it was this, because it was so new in those days, there was this kind of quiet of, wow, what's going on?
Right, it was unusual for them.
Yeah.
But God used that music talent and that understanding you had, that connection you had with the scene to open all these doors to reach people that wouldn't usually be reached. But I'm wondering, today, if we're honest, in the European Leadership Forum, there hasn't been a lot of hip hop, there hasn't been a lot of that whole scene. And sometimes people can hear your story and think about that, and they might think, oh, this is kind of a, it's a niche thing, it's like a certain group fringe thing. But help us understand the importance of hip hop culture today, like the influence, the impact that this has globally today.
Yeah, the reality is that unlike other trends, I grew up around punk rockers and mods, and there's been other trends and musical trends or music-based cultural trends that have faded, they've come and gone. One of the things about hip-hop and the enduring nature of hip-hop is that it has given a consistent voice for the struggle of the marginalized. And Time magazine now recognize it as the world's favorite hip-hop culture. Pretty much every country's got its own expression of hip-hop, because there's a sense in which the worldview and ideology of hip hop, that sense of fight the power, resist the struggle, you can make it, And not even just, oh, you can make it, keep struggling, but now, in this later era of hip hop, look at all of these guys who have made it. They're billionaires, millionaires. So you got the kind of rags to riches aspect of it.
Right.
You know, it's like, you can come up.
Yeah.
And so hip hop has evolved and snowballed into the cultural phenomenon, the powerhouse that it is a multi-trillion-dollar industry. You know, hip hop started with 4 elements: the DJ, the MC on the microphone, the break dancers, and the graffiti artists. So it already had an ecosystem that was quite pervasive, quite rich. And all of that has grown and consistently continued to impact global communities.
Yeah. Like today, it's everywhere, isn't it? Like pop culture, fashion, the whole thing is just impacted.
Absolutely.
I mean, like we're in the European Leadership Forum, you have every European city would have a massive hip hop scene. It's so much part of that youth culture and young adult culture.
But in many ways, it still connects at grassroots with the marginalized.
Right.
And I think that's where the reality is that in the church, very often that overlooking of the marginalized means that those in the kind of hip hop culture are very easily overlooked.
Okay.
Or it's kind of seen as this youth hippity hoppity thing. and it's almost as if it's treated like it's a fad or a trend that, yeah, it is here, but it's gonna go.
Right.
I mean, hip hop has spawned major derivatives that continue to extend its tentacles into culture.
Right.
So from a missional point of view, we're remiss if we don't actually take it seriously and recognize the way in which it has discipled a generation. Hip hop has more lyrics per bar than most other forms of music.
Full of content.
You compare it, it's content rich, content dense. And the messaging and ideology of hip hop, if you overlook it, you're missing the fact that they are discipling generations.
Yeah, yeah.
Hip hop got to a point where the consumers were predominantly white middle class kids.
Wow.
And they may not have kind of experienced the struggle, but they so related to those in the struggle and felt a sense of a desire for that empowerment that is expressed.
So it's really transcended any kind of particular country or nationality or ethnicity. It's just across the board. What about, you know, obviously you've already made the point of how crucial it is missionally thinking that the church engages in the culture around us, and hip hop is a massive part of that. But I'd imagine that for a lot of church leaders and pastors, they might, or Christians in general, might look at hip hop, especially if they don't know it so well, and kind of see it as this evil genre, or like, oh, it's full of, you know, bad things. And so how could you ever engage with that from a Christian perspective, or from even a missional point that you're putting here, like of sharing the gospel? So what would you say to people that see hip hop in that light?
I think it's first of all to recognize that we're called to go into all the world and make disciples of all nations, peoples, cultures, subcultures. And so it's part of our fundamental mandate and calling to reach out to those who are in hip hop culture. Amen. And even more so when we recognize the influence that it has. You know, it's 50 years of hip hop. You've got people who are judges, people who are, you know, educators, people who are doctors, people who are leaders in society who have recognition and awareness. You know, you look at hip hop in the White House, or like, did you get what I'm saying?
Yes.
And so in that sense, we're remiss if we overlook the necessity and the place of the church to reach and speak into that culture.
And it's full of opportunities, right? Because if you're a church in any European city today, if you can tap into and connect with that culture, with the younger generation now, I mean, you could be reaching young people across the city. You could be reaching into communities that maybe some of the churches don't always reach, right? I mean, it's not, obviously it transcends that, but the Black community, hip hop's such an important part of that culture. And if the church isn't engaging with it, we're missing so many of a whole generation,
If we are intentionally committed to a Revelation 7 intercultural vision of church, then let's think about who's missing. From our church, who's missing from our forums, who's missing, and say, okay, we need to take on the burden and the baton to actually be intentional about seeking to reach those people.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're just paying lip service to this sense of intercultural and church, every tribe and tongue, as if we're just expecting that to transpire in heaven when we'll just look around and there'll be people from every culture.
Somehow they'll make it.
But the reality is that we're supposed to be seeking to see God's kingdom done here on earth as in heaven.
Yeah. So how do we do it? Do we need some of our conservative pastors to start rapping, or what's the best way to go?
Please, Lord, no. I mean, if the Lord's gifted them like that, maybe, yeah. Okay. But yeah, the reality is that there are people, and we see this, in the Book of Acts, for example. You look at the way in which the gospel crossed cultures in the Book of Acts, and you had Philip, who was a Hellenistic Jew, reaching the Ethiopian eunuch. And so as a Hellenistic Jew, he was a Jew of Greek culture, and he wasn't that kind of true blue conservative Jew, but he was also not entirely further removed as a Gentile. And so he was that kind of middleman who was able to be bilingual, understand both cultures and communities, and then be able to connect with the Ethiopian in a way that was accessible and relatable. And so I would definitely commend leaders to be actually just much more observant and open to those in their midst, in their congregations, in their churches, in their fellowships, who are clearly one step closer. Look to be, this is the way I look at myself these days, is looking to be the David to the Solomon, and say, look, I would love to see this happen, Lord. And that's the best place to start, in prayer, be praying, actually, Lord. But then recognizing there are those that we can resource, encourage, strengthen, disciple, build up, release, to be that voice that's needed in the culture.
And that's something you've been doing quite a bit of recently over the last years or so. In London City Mission, you have the Pioneer Program. You've been investing in people in that way. Can you talk a little bit more about that? So as a church leader, what I'm hearing you say is we need to find those that are engaging with that culture, give them space, raise them up, David to Solomon. So tell me a bit more about that. How can a church leader today give space for that? And what do they need? I mean, artists, musicians that might be in the hip hop culture, how can we give them space and encourage them?
First of all, just recognizing that they are part of the body who has an instrumental part to play. At LCM, London City Mission, we started the Pioneer Program because we recognize that there's a whole community of people who are overlooked and yet are best placed to reach their communities because they are from that community. And because they're often from underprivileged or deprived backgrounds, they don't have the opportunities for training and so on. And so it was Graham Miller, the CEO, who said, look, would you come in, Efrem and Rob, and help us reach them and develop them? And when he said that, I was like, bro, you're not serious, in my mind, because these people can't afford free training. Like, they can't afford the time to access training that they don't have to pay for. And so I said that to him, I said, they can't afford free training, bro. We're gonna have to pay them. And without missing a heartbeat, he said, God will provide.
Wow.
Let's do it. And at that point, I was just like, yes, this is somebody who's genuinely committed, ready to put their money where their mouth is and invest in those that would ordinarily be seen as uninvestable. And so that having that heart and that readiness to look for those who are the overlooked and say, okay, it may be just invest in time in the first instance, and really just pouring into them with intentionality in ways that would see them strengthened. And the things that the forum talk about in terms of raising up leaders, discipling, really persuasive evangelism. These are the things, and being a part of the network means that we've connected here, and we're strengthened by the reason of that, and others are able to connect. And so there are those Philips, there are those people who have connections into the culture already. And if that's your heart and you're willing to really respond to that need and that motivation, then together we can do this.
Yeah. That's so cool to hear, Efrem. And I think a lot of the reason also why you understand that is you yourself have come from a walk of being an artist, being a musician, seeing the scene, being called by God to reach, and now you're able to also raise up others in doing that. But I know you've still got a bit of music and artistry in you. You're still doing a lot. And I'd love to, can you demonstrate to us somehow a little bit what you do in the hip hop culture? Bring us some rhymes or something?
Bruv, you put me on the spot like that. You know what, one of the things that I've appreciated in this forum 2025 is the, just in the pre-read and the general sense of call to a global vision of the gospel, is the need for an apologetic that really meets our secularized culture head on. And we're talking 20 years ago, 30 years ago, I wrote a lyric with that intention. And it really speaks to our situation today still. In most universities and in most high schools, they have banned the Bible and say it's for fools, and yet still choose to be preaching all that speculation, natural selection, instead of Jesus' resurrection. It takes more faith to believe in evolution. It's merely a theory whose evidence has been disproven. Man's philosophies ain't nothing but profanity. We don't know absolutes, we only breed immorality and depravity, anarchy within humanity. Godlessness is the root of all insanity, but great is the mystery of godliness. God was manifest in the flesh before enough witnesses. Beneath the cross, Darwin's wisdom ain't but foolishness, because it can't give us purpose, hope, or righteousness. Oh yes, our faith has sure evidence. Jesus rose on the third day like sweet smelling incense. To the deceived, he's a stench. To those who believe and receive and repent, he is a life-giving fragrance. And I've done that lyric in various ways, and it's provoked opportunities for the most engaging conversations. When a girl came up to me and was just like, I'm an atheist. And I said, yeah, you're an atheist. Not for long.
I love it.
And so it creates a catalyst for real gospel conversations.
Thank you so much, Efrem. That was so encouraging and inspiring. And it's so inspiring to hear your story. You've got a workshop happening during the European Leadership Forum, the Hip Hop Generation, Change the World. Who will change their world with the gospel? Maybe any last thoughts on this? One thing that excites me about this, we in our mission, Steiger, and many others who we partner and walk together with have been praying that God would raise up a new missionary movement to reach this generation today, to reach secular culture, to reach the hip hop culture and all the other scenes that are part of that. And we're praying that God would raise up those missionaries. Do you have any thoughts for somebody who might be inspired by this and say, I want to do something. I want to reach hip hop culture. I want to reach the world around me. Any last thoughts for somebody considering that?
First thing I would say is hip hop culture is a metaphor of the marginalized. And in all of our cities, in all of our communities, there are those people who are marginalized. And the reality is that in the way in which they're kind of overlooked, they can experience growth and even success in ways that could come to really swamp and detract from the gospel and draw people away. So, you know, I think of the gaming community, for example.
Yeah.
I don't really know much about gaming, and that's not my generation, but I know it's so pervasive. And I feel that that's another area in which it can be so easy to kind of just overlook this community of people for whom that culture is growing and developing its own ecosystem and really able to have a way in which it can detract and draw away and contradict the gospel.
Right.
So let's be open. It's not all about hip hop, but who are the marginalized? And to that end, I kind of use this acronym when encouraging people, you know what, in God we've got it made, M-A-D-E. First of all, motivation and aspiration. If that Revelation 7 is our motivation and our aspiration, then prayer with great perspiration, you know, is what we need to give ourselves to. Yeah. And then the D is determination, being intentional, to do our due diligence, and really, as we're praying, to be seeking and connecting. And E, expectation. expecting God. Like, you put all of those things together and watch God cook.
Wow.
You know?
Love it. Could you, Efrem, could you like end us with like praying over some people that might be feeling called to get involved, to do something new with what God's given them?
Amen. Let's pray. Lord, I thank you so much for the privilege of being one of those marginalized, overlooked individuals who you came and reached with your glorious gospel. And there are a multitude like me and more who you are intent to reach and would use your people as the only plan, no plan B. The church, your people are your plan for mission in this world. And Lord, I thank you for those who have listened to this and have had a sense of resonance, a real sense of affirmation as to that sense of leading that you've placed on their heart. Maybe even an inspiration in the first instance to look up and to see the fields that are white unto harvest. And so, Lord, I pray that you would strengthen and bless and lead and guide, that you would connect, and that, Lord, you would provide, and that through them, through us, we would see you impact this culture that is nothing without you, Lord. And so we ask this in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Efrem. That's
Bless you, bro.
Awesome.